Hey everybody, welcome back to the 6 round post-fight show with me, Zane Simon. Come to y'all just after the end of UFC 315 at the Bell Center in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And off of a remarkably fantastic title fight, Jack Della Maddalena and champion Belal Muhammad Della Maddalena taking the belt away from the champion in a title fight that I at least thought was going to be a real grind or a Della Maddalena one punch flurry knockout, whatever. And I mean, I gotta say, Belal Muhammad is, he's earned a reputation for being one of the absolute best game planning fighters in MMA out there. And this felt like a fight where he just got out game planned. Della Maddalena did a wonderful job of winning the footwork battle against Muhammad all fight and of not overextending his combinations, of not running in on Muhammad, and of drawing Muhammad into him so that Muhammad, being a, adequate, not amazing, but adequate boxer and very decent jabber, was felt much more like he had to lead and he had to push forward on JDM and try to create the combinations, create the exchanges that would draw JDM out and give him a chance to push JDM into the cage, give him a chance to duck under into takedowns and all that. And instead, by letting Belal go first, what we really saw is, Belal, he's not one of the world's great athletes. He's not a incredible knockout power threat. So it was really something where JDM could afford to let Belal go first, could afford to let him come forward. And as a result, he just got to counter him all fight. I mean, this was really slick work from Della Maddalena. We see in here somebody saying, shout out to JDM's defense. He did a wonderful job just keeping things tight, slipping, bobbing, weaving. And for Muhammad, I mean, this really feels like one of the times where he did not do his homework well. I don't know what happened out there, but he really, we saw him coming out there, no kicking game from Belal, no body work, and not really prepared to fight through hell to create the tie-ups and the takedowns where he could start to take advantage of Della Maddalena making mistakes. Because, credit to Della Maddalena, he came really well prepared to shut down clinch entries, to stop basic takedown entries from Muhammad. And later on in the fight, when we saw Muhammad actually really push the clinch, get aggressive, start chaining his attempts, we started to see Della Maddalena make some mistakes. We started to see him starting to try to spin out of things. When Muhammad was in top control, you saw JDM kind of roll for a leg lock and try to scramble his way back up to his feet that way. And, some of it worked, but it was the kind of stuff that it should have been something Muhammad could plan around and punish JDM for, find ways to make him pay, but he really didn't seem to know what to do or how to lock down any of the positions he got. So it was, you got to credit JDM's cardio, as you said, as brought up here. You've got to credit his game planning, his footwork, his defensive boxing. And then you got to also say that, Belal Muhammad, he really he was at the right place, right time, lightning in a bottle champion. He, not being a great athlete, even being a great game planner, that's usually not enough if you're not also an amazingly strong, fast, powerful athlete to become a world champion. And he found a very lackluster, dispassionate, disinterested seeming Leon Edwards and put together just the right fight to take him on. And he captured gold. I didn't even right when he did, and I was as impressive as that was. I was thinking, Muhammad's never gonna defend this belt. The first title challenger he fights is gonna take it from him. And then they gave JDM the title shot, and I thought, okay, well, maybe actually JDM is just simple enough a fighter to plan around. A very boxing centric, very pressure focused fighter that Bilal, being the lesser athlete, could come out and find a way to work his way past JDM. I picked Bilal going in. I thought, okay, I'm not going to pick Bilal against Shavkat. I might not pick him against Ian Gary. Might not pick him against, we even brought up on the video. I don't know. I'm not even 100% sure if I would have picked him against Joaquin Buckley. But I thought, okay, maybe JDM could have been a fighter he could plan around, and he absolutely could not. I was totally wrong. JDM showed up and looked fantastic. This was a pinnacle performance from him. I mean, we went from him getting taken down. What was it? Let me bring up the stats here. Della Maddalena getting taken down 7 times by Gilbert Burns, 3 times by Basil Hafez, to only getting taken down 3 times by Bilal Muhammad and finding a way up to his feet pretty quickly in every single one. So I really, I gotta say Della Maddalena came in superbly prepared. He looked absolutely like he knew what Bilal's path to victory was and how he wanted to stop it. On the flip side, Bilal seemed like he came out there ready to just fall into Della Maddalena's best game, really ready to have a boxing match and to expect that he could find the timing and the pressure to break Maddalena on the back foot. I think there were moments where you'd see, like, when Bilal would double up on his jab, when he would put the pressure on, Della Maddalena would back up to the cage. He wasn't like slipping expertly off to sides and creating angles that way. But he was also coming back with hard enough shots that he made maintaining that pressure and maintaining that success always an incredibly difficult, chancy proposition for Muhammad. And the times when Muhammad could really grit his teeth, bite down, and take advantage of that were few and far between. And he didn't really seem to have a plan to follow up on that, to turn those kind of advantages into a longer-term momentum steering style of fighting. So, I'm really happy for Bilal that he became champ. He's very much a guy who had to work really hard every step of the way to get there, who didn't get any of the athletic advantages gifted to him, and pure, you're pure blue collar champ kind of guy. But I will also say that I am 5 times more excited for Della Maddalena against Shavkat or Islam Makhachev, as somebody suggested. I don't think they're going to do Islam next. It feels like Makhachev, like that lightweight division, has a bunch of fights in it that people are looking at. Topuria's there now. We've seen that, like, Gagey is trying. He feels like he's primed for a title shot. All this stuff. I don't want to see Islam versus Della Maddalena right now. I would be happier with that than Islam Bilal, and I think there are actually maybe some religious reasons that they wouldn't make that. But I am much more excited by the proposition of Della Maddalena versus Shavkat, or Della Maddalena versus Gary. And okay, we've also got word here that Dana says that Dana said at the pre-fight presser that if JDM won, Islam would get a shot. Oh God, I don't want it. I don't want it. I want other fights for JDM at welterweight. I don't want to see Islam right there, right now. That just doesn't feel fun to me. But if it has to be, that's fine. I'd rather see JDM versus Shavkat. I'd rather see JDM versus Gary. I'd rather see those kinds of fights and then see Islam move up at some point otherwise. Because, I mean, we still are in an era where, like, Islam Makhachev's list of his list of title defenses are what? The bantamweight champ, or the featherweight champ Volkanovski twice, and then Poirier, and then Renato Moicano. Like, there are other people to fight in that division. There are other options. So I don't know what I don't understand what the purpose of having Islam go up to welterweight right now would be. It just doesn't feel like the fun option in that division. That Arman Tsarukyan fight rematch for Makhachev, that feels like one of the most exciting title fights that you could make right now. You can do Gaethje Makhachev. I'm interested in that. You can, we've got Topuria there. These are other options I want to see. Anyway, if it, given my druthers, I'd like to see JDM versus Shavkat. I'd like to see Islam versus Tsarukyan, but that's where I'd like to see these things go. But I get that the UFC is in their division jumping super fight era, so I guess we get Topuria moving up to fight for a belt, the vacant lightweight title right away, and then Islam moving up to fight JDM, which if he does that, I still have to pick Islam Makhachev. This was a perfect fight from JDM against an opponent who had the potential to game plan for a win, but doesn't have the athleticism that he really had to walk a tightrope to be there to do that. And I don't think Islam Makhachev would have to walk that tightrope. I think he would be able to land with impact much more than Bilal could on the feet, and that he can turn that into highly athletic chain wrestling much more easily than Bilal could. And there were still moments in there, like I said, when Bilal actually got in on multiple takedown attempts, and when he really started to chain things together, you could still see the cracks in JDM's wrestling defense show up. So I would pick Islam right away. And then, I'd be still fascinated in Islam versus Shavkat and Islam versus Gary or whatever. I'm enjoying Islam as a champ in any division, but I don't know. Just doesn't seem necessary. Still, this was a fight that, I had pegged going in. Bilal Muhammad finds a way to grind out a win. I had this pegged as being very Ian Gary versus Carlos Prates, like, where Gary, he put out together a great performance and he beat Prates, who looked underprepared. And then at the very end, he still had to cling on and ride his way out to a very narrow, difficult victory. That was my prediction, was that JDM would get his chance to turn it on Bilal, but most of the time it would be Bilal navigating a way around him. And instead it was Bilal just sort of marching into the teeth of JDM's offensive game over and over again and paying for it over and over again. I had it 4-1 JDM. I can see 2-3 or 3-2. I think you have to give JDM 1, 2, and 5. I gave him 3 as well. But either way, I'm glad the judges got it right. And I'm glad we got a really cool title fight out of it. Honestly, ton of fun. Co-main event, I will also say, Valentina Shevchenko, Manon Fiorot. This was the best version of this fight we could have had. I picked Shevchenko pretty confidently going into this. My age was a concern, but I also just feel like Fiorot rarely puts enough on her strikes and rarely finds a way to chain power. She doesn't have a good transfer of power from hips to shoulders. Somebody in the live chat over on my Substack, which I will throw out. You should totally go check out my Substack during events. It's free. We just hang out, chat, all good. But somebody in there mentioned that they'd actually had to mimic Fiorot for a training for somebody for a fight. And that a lot of it they think is that her sort of karate style puts a lot of focus on landing and on the sort of like static full body movement of like hopping in, landing something, hopping out. And it doesn't put nearly enough emphasis on the kinetic transfer of energy. Whatever it is, her kinetic transfer from legs to hands is not good. And to me, it's like, okay, well, Fiorot isn't going to hurt Shevchenko really bad. Then this is all about how much has Shevchenko declined athletically that she can let Fiorot bully her. And we saw some of that reasonably. I do think you could make a reasonable case for Fiorot winning 3 rounds of this fight. Would I want it scored that way? Absolutely not. The big damage in this fight, the 2 definitive rounds were Shevchenko breaking Fiorot's nose badly, and Shevchenko hitting Fiorot right in the nose and dropping her and making Fiorot scream in pain. And so if you're going to have those kinds of 2 rounds where you really have to score for Shevchenko, and the other 3 rounds of the fight are going to be very close, very even, very back and forth, nondescript, then you really have to weigh that the fight is much more likely to be scored for the fighter that clearly won 2 rounds and not the fighter that maybe barely edged out 3 rounds. So, yeah, as somebody else noted, Godzilla Hooper, Shev still have some bad fight IQ moments even after the Grasso trilogy. She is still a fighter very unused to having opponents pick up on any of her tendencies and very unused to having opponents physically bully her and go after her. She doesn't put 2-on-1 to fight the body lock when somebody has a rear waist cinch body lock on her. She doesn't go for underhooks automatically when somebody's going in on a double leg against her. She's not used to having to do the more technical defensive things. She's used to being able to athlete out of everything, and it shows up time and time again. But Fiorot did not have she just had to step in on Shevchenko. Her path to beating Shevchenko was to try to walk through and bully her. And to do that, she had to eat shots. And after busting her nose like that, you could see every time that something landed clean, she would just wince in pain. The bridge there was just too big to cross for it to be an easy win. So I'm not surprised Shevchenko won that fight. It seems likely that we have the next in line answer already set with Natalia Silva, who beat Alexa Grasso earlier in what I think was a really pretty strong performance from Silva. Not incredibly thrilling for people hoping that she would go out there and, I don't know, knock Grasso out or be something other than a fighter happy to be incredibly fast on her bike and landing power, just enough power to keep an opponent from closing her down. Got Ian asking, I kind of want Weili versus Val. Am I crazy? No, I have wanted to see Valentina Shevchenko versus Weili Zhang for several years now. I think it is the best. I think it is a really honestly meaningful fight for both of them. I think it is actually a cool fight. I mean, this feels like something where, Shevchenko was on her like third lap through straw or flyweight contenders now. She's not fighting the people that were coming up at the same time she was. She's not fighting the people that were coming up chasing her after she won the title. The title. She's now facing the people that are chasing the people that were chasing her the first time she won the belt. So, to me, Zhang Weili versus Valentina Shevchenko feels like a really cool must-make title fight. I would actually also be okay with seeing Shevchenko take on Juliana Pena if she beats Kayla Harrison. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. In the flyweight division, if there's one challenger that makes sense right now, it's Natalia Silva. And I am really interested in seeing that fight because Silva is going to be the first fighter in quite a long time. I mean, honestly, yeah. I mean, she's going to be the first fighter in a while that is really and truly faster than Shevchenko. I think people saying that Val will beat Silva. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to pick Val against almost anyone in that division still until she really shows she's fallen off a cliff. But Silva's speed and her willingness to be on her bike, I think that would actually be difficult for Shevchenko to track down. And the amount of volume that Silva throws out in front of herself as she's on that, skirting around, I think it would be a surprisingly difficult fight for Val at this stage in her career. But either way, I'm interested in it. I'd be more interested in Weili Zhang. But if that's the fight they want to make, that's fine too. Forgot we need to fight for Bilal Muhammad now, coming off his title loss. And I mean, I would kind of say that if we had a fight for Bilal right now, you could do the Leon Edwards trilogy. I would be here for that. I would actually be more here for and think they should really do Muhammad Covington. Just purely out of petty spite against Colby Covington, honestly. He hasn't earned it. Doesn't make any real sense. But it does seem like it would be that right kind of fun spite booking. It's a good use of Bilal Muhammad. It's a fight that I would actually get up for with Bilal Muhammad. So I think you kind of have to book that one. Danny Burns asking, did Valentina get the decision? Yes, she did. And deserved, I think. For Manon Fiorot, coming off that fight, I think honestly, I hate booking two fighters coming off the same card. But Manon Fiorot versus Alexa Grasso is right there. So there's also Aaron Blanchfield, Macy Barber. So the loser of that fight. But Fiorot versus Grasso it's just right there. Book that. That seems natural. That seems fun. Yeah, you could do Jasmine Jasudavicius, but I think there's a little bit longer road up the division, or I don't know, a couple more stops on her way to the title here. Somebody else suggested, well, Rose Namajunas is fighting Miranda Maverick. If Namajunas beats Miranda Maverick, I would actually really like to see Jasudavicius versus Namajunas. I think that would be fun. And then otherwise, if we're going to see Shevchenko versus Silva, or Shevchenko versus Weili, or Shevchenko versus Weili and Silva, then you also have the opportunity, Blanchfield and Barber are fighting, and the winner and the loser of that fight are going to need other fights. Jasmine Jasudavicius would be great for either of those. She could fight the loser of Barber versus Blanchfield. She could fight the winner. That would be perfectly fine to me. Asking about the Jasmine versus Natalia Silva, I think that's a waste of Natalia Silva, honestly. I think that Natalia Silva is already at a point where she's exciting. She's clearly a great athlete. She's an interesting contender, and she just beat Alexa Grasso. Like, Jasmine Jasudavicius would be a huge step backwards after beating a champion. There's no reason for Silva to take that fight. If she's smart right now, especially she's only 28. This is the time, if you need to sit out a year, just sit out a year and wait for that title shot. Get the title shot. Make that happen. Do not give in to the UFC's game and the UFC's pressure and just, yeah, it doesn't make sense. And as somebody else noted, she already beat Jasmine Jasudavicius in her debut, so doesn't make any sense at all. So this is Natalia Silva's time to sit on the sidelines and wait for her shot at the belt. She's earned it. All right. That brings us to a featherweight bout. Ayman Zahabi, Jose Aldo, and this was a cool, fun fight. It was violent, had major momentum swings. It was thrilling. It was also, I hate to say it. Look, somebody's saying I scored it for Zahabi. Yeah, I scored it for Jose Aldo. And I think he kind of got robbed. I think that he pretty clearly landed, to me, the better shots in the first and second round. And I don't care about the Aldo missing weight. It seems like, by all accounts, it might have been a decision they agreed on ahead of time, and that Aldo was also gaming the whatever. Like, I'm not going to care about that. Zahabi didn't seem broken up about it. I'm not going to be broken up about it. But what I will say is that this was a very embarrassing fight for Jose Aldo. And I'm really glad that he retired after it, because he made it clear at pretty much every moment that he could put together 30 seconds of sustained offense that he was still way faster and way more powerful than Ayman Zahabi. And this is a fight that at no point in the previous 20 years he would have ever lost or been close to losing. And then he went absolutely bananas after landing a huge head kick on Zahabi and tried to finish it and had a big burst of offense and gassed so badly that he had to pull guard and got crushed by elbows all the rest of the round. And they had to scrape him off the canvas. This is a round where he nearly knocked Zahabi out, and there was a potential argument that he got 10-8'd in round 3. I wouldn't have scored it that way. Nobody did, but there's an argument. And that, Jose Aldo does not need to be he doesn't need to be in fights like this. We don't need to see him barely scraping together wild losses against fighters like, I had people talking, in the live chat being like, oh, it just looks like two old guys who are past their prime fighting. And like, Ayman Zahabi has had to improve and claw and work tirelessly tooth and nail for years and years and years and years to get good enough to where booking this fight and him being in it made any sense at all. This is pinnacle Ayman Zahabi. And his pinnacle was barely good enough to compete with the worst version of Jose Aldo. And I don't need to see Jose Aldo in those kinds of fights anymore. I don't. I'm so glad he retired after this. He's been an incredible champion. He has, he was great for 20 years. He had an amazing, amazing run of longevity. Like, this is a man who hit his prime in 2009. He knocked out Mike Brown. And then he was still schooling Rob Font in 2021. Like, the huge breadth of success for Aldo is amazing, and he deserves to be celebrated. He deserves to be celebrated as, if not the greatest featherweight of all time, certainly the second, or, the top. He's right there. And so I don't need to see him in fights like this. I'm glad he retired. I hope he doesn't go off to do bare knuckle boxing or combat karate or regular boxing or whatever. And as for Zahabi, I mean, this is people might be like, oh, he's 37. He's not going to be a title contender. What is he fighting for? All that. Like, this is a career crowning achievement for Ayman Zahabi. You have to give him credit that this is an amazing, for a guy who once got knocked out by Ricardo Ramos and got decisioned by Vince Morales to fight his way to beating Jose Aldo. Like, that is stuff to go home to tell your grandkids about right there, So for me, like, this is, if I'm him, this is the career achievement I am forever hanging my hat on. And no, I don't think that it was that Quebec scoring is why Aldo lost. I think that Aldo is at this point only able to fight in bursts, so it's easy to forget. It's even in round 2, which I think Aldo won. It's easy to forget the success he had because it's just in short bursts, and Zahabi is going out there clearly all the time and fighting to his absolute damnedest. So I can see why judges scored it that way. I don't like it, but I also, like I say, I think that morally, if you're really talking like aura-wise, this was a Aldo loss anyway. The aura was gone when he's out there getting whooped on the ground by Ayman Zahabi and pulling guard. Like, that is an aura killer you can't come back from. All right. As for who Ayman Zahabi could fight next, assuming he goes back to bantamweight, let's see. He definitely deserves to find some kind of fun name in that division at this point. And he's having enough success that he's actually he's ranked at bantamweight at this point, isn't he? Yeah. So, I mean, I think you got to do Ayman Zahabi, Rob Font. Called out Marlon Vera. Okay, yeah. Marlon Vera is already booked against Mario Batista, so that's nonsense. Actually, I have a better idea. Could say Rob Font. That's an easy one. But I say you either do Ayman Zahabi versus Davison Figueiredo or Ayman Zahabi versus Henry Cejudo. I think he's going to win either of those fights, but I didn't think he'd win this fight. Let him try to climb the division against the other old men in it. That's where he's at. He's having his moment. If he just beat Jose Aldo, he deserves a chance to take out another legend. So have him fight Henry Cejudo. I'm here for that. And as for Aldo, I'm just glad he's retired. All right, that brings us to a women's flyweight bout: Natalia Silva, Alexa Grasso. And I'm pretty happy with the vivisection this week on this one. We called this pretty much exactly right. And I'm actually more impressed even than with Natalia Silva than I thought that I would be, because I thought that Grasso, and partially this is also Grasso just fighting to her own worst tendencies. But Alexa Grasso, my frame of reference for this fight was really around Vivi Araujo going in. And if you watch the fight that Alexa Grasso had against Vivi Araujo, who is herself also a very good athlete, Grasso went out there and she basically just matched Araujo strike for strike. And it was just Grasso's better form that kept her in front of Araujo in that fight. And Natalia Silva is a better, faster athlete than even Araujo, is a much more mobile athlete, and is a much more dynamic athlete in the strikes she picks. So my feeling was that maybe Grasso could hang in and go strike for strike with Silva, but that it would be the role reversal, where she would just be the one landing the worst strikes in a fight where she was getting to land as many. Instead, honestly, it really turned out that she did not have the footwork or the presence of mind to change up her approach to even match pace and keep up with Silva. Silva was able to just run rings around her, run her into shots, land the better punches, land the better kicks, keep Grasso constantly walking onto shots and moving into shots, and really just took advantage of the fact that, Natalia Silva is mind-bendingly fast. There was at least one moment where she hit a high kick and then like a hook behind it. And I've seen fighters land the hook to high kick combo, that Carlos Condit special, where they'll throw like a wild overhand and then they'll use the momentum from that overhand to bring the hip around behind it and like come up over with a funky looking kick. But to hit a high kick and then to like replant and throw a hook from the same side behind the high kick, that to me is insane. Like, that is a degree of speed where not only did you just blast somebody in the head and they're now expecting something to come on that same side, but you're fast enough to then sneak a hook in right to the same place they're still expecting it. She is insanely quick, and she's got the dynamism. She's got at least reasonable power. I think that she is happy. She's happy to get people fighting a fight where they feel like they've lost. She's not somebody who really goes out there and tries to finish. Her aggression and her power is much more used to try and scare people away so that they don't pursue her, and so that she can just kind of set up and have fun and land her strikes and do what she wants to. But in a division that doesn't have a lot of big finishers, that still makes her a real problem. And I think, honestly, that could be a real problem against Shevchenko. I know that somebody earlier was saying that that's not the way Shevchenko loses and all that, but like, how many times have we seen Shevchenko fight somebody who was not only as athletic and as fast as her, but could land with her power and could be as mobile. I'm interested. I'm fascinated. I would still probably pick Shevchenko in that fight, but it feels much more interesting to me than the Manon Fiorot matchup. I'll say that. That takes us to me figuring out where the hell I am. Yeah, that takes us. Oh, and for Alexa Grasso, we already talked about this. Fiorot Grasso is a natural matchup. Natalia Silva next. I think she should just sit and wait for the title fight. Don't take another fight right now. The UFC really is in a position where if Weili doesn't want to move up, if Shevchenko wants to defend her belt again soon, then Natalia Silva is the obvious title fight choice. Don't take yourself out of running for that. And yeah, in terms of somebody asking about the Lobo gym, is it really a limited gym? Yeah, I think it is. I think that camp, they teach some solid fundamentals here and there. They teach a basic MMA kickboxing, and they, teach some good some aggressive grappling. But it does seem like the fighters, we've seen multiple contenders, even a champion out of there now, and their games are all a little gimmicky in how they're geared for elite MMA. They are dynamic, quick bursts, but they're not round-winning, progressive, momentum-building, fight-sealing. Probably the best process-driven fighter out of that camp is Irene Aldana, and she's also just sort of the most rote, mechanical, unimaginative of the fighters, where she'll just throw the same combo over and over and over again. So, yeah, I think Lobo Gym is kind of, they've had their moment, but it feels like they're not bringing an elite game to the current highest level of the sport. All right, that brings us to a lightweight bout. Benoit Saint-Denis, Kyle Propolek. And this looked like a lot of what it is. I know that Saint-Denis may have looked a little flighty and a little out of his element at times early in this, but Propolek is also a power brawler. That is how he exists on the regional scene, is a dude who throws one huge shot at a time and throws it with good power and has a lot of variety, will mix things up. I'm not surprised he caught Benoit Saint-Denis a couple of times. Saint-Denis is a fighter who absolutely intrinsically has to be pressuring. When he is not pressuring, nothing about his game works. There are no defensive instincts built in. There's no defensive footwork built in. There's no range maintenance. There's just, his whole game is made to be running forward and crushing you. So him not doing that for a few times and getting caught a little bit by Propolek, that's going to be Benoit Saint-Denis in any fight where he doesn't immediately jump on somebody. That said, he jumped on Kyle Propolek plenty, and this was almost entirely one-way traffic every time he did. Yeah, I agree. It sucks that Joel Alvarez got hurt. I would love to see them rebook that fight, frankly. And I still think that that's fascinating because, like I say, Benoit Saint-Denis is a fighter who has to be moving forward to succeed. And Alvarez is a fighter who traps fighters that have to move forward on him. His whole game is built around stabbing people with really big long-range tools so that they feel desperate, and then wrapping them up in a submission. But that's, so that's the game. That to me is a fascinating style clash. That's a lot more interesting than a lot of other fights that Saint-Denis could have right now. So I kind of hope they rebook that. If they don't, looking at is Saint-Denis, well, he's yeah. Otherwise, looking at the rankings, I mean, Alvarez broke his hand, so he might not be around anytime soon. You could book Saint-Denis versus Grant Dawson just as a punishment fight for Grant Dawson's grind style. I'd be here for that. I'm sure Paddy Pimblett will not fight Benoit Saint-Denis coming off his win over Michael Chandler. But yeah, you could also do like Dan Hooker versus Benoit Saint-Denis. I'd be down for that as well. Those would be fun fights. If there's maybe, let's see, I'm trying to think, is there a borderline lightweight fighter that would be fun for just a cool action fight matchup? Could maybe do somebody like yeah, you could do Manuel Torres. I mean, he's just coming off that win over Drew Dober. He got stopped by Ignacio Bahamondes, but that would be just a guaranteed fun action fight. Or maybe, yeah, something like that. Mauricio Hufi. Could do Mauricio Hufi versus Benoit Saint-Denis. I'd be up for that, actually. So either do Saint-Denis, rebook Saint-Denis versus Alvarez, or if Alvarez is going to be too long with that handbrake, then book Mauricio Hufi versus Benoit Saint-Denis. I'm up for that. All right. On that note, Mike Malot, Charles Radkkey, and man, I think Connor put it best on the Vivi this week when he said that this fight reminded him of the old adage that you don't hook with a hooker. And that, unfortunately for Charles Radkkey in this case, Mike Malot is the hooker. I know. Goofy's helping. Whatever. He does throw a lot of really good... Like, Mike Malot's whole game, he gets talked about a bunch as being a striking coach from Team Alpha Male. And his whole game is geared around pocket boxing. His range kickboxing game is really lackluster. His striking game is all about his slickness, his ability to move, and his ability to throw tight punches in the pocket in combination. And that's where Radkkey lives and dies, is off of his ability to get left hooks going. And that just meant that the whole fight, everything Radkkey needed to do to win involved stepping into the best range Mike Malot had and testing the best part of Mike Malot's game. And for a while, it seemed like Radkkey was the more powerful guy and that he was maybe getting outpointed, but also landing the bigger shots. But with the complete lack of defense Radkkey had, you can only keep walking onto cleaner, sharper punches so often before you pay for it. And Mike Malot put him out cold. That ground and pound, man, ground and pound has been a lost art in MMA for a minute now. That ground and pound Mike Malot put on Charles Radkkey. Fighters out there, watch that, study that. That was classic Anderson Silva style ground and pound. That is the standing over your opponent, targeting the chin perfectly, laser blasts, and just annihilated him. Great fight. Great performance from Malot. After that win, I'd kind of like to see him face somebody like Randy Brown, maybe, or maybe let's see. Do Randy Brown. I mean, you could do D-Rod. That would be fine. Rodriguez is coming off that big Santiago Ponzinibbio win. You could do Brian Battle. Would also be a fine and fun fight. That's probably the right... Honestly, that's probably the right matchup. Do Brian Battle, Mike Malot. Either way, he should be in that edges of the top 15 conversation. There's also like Gabriel Bonfim out there or Chidi Njokuani. But for now, I'm going to say Brian Battle. That seems like the right fight. All right, that brings us to a women's flyweight bout. Jasmine Jasudavicius, Jessica Andrade. And I had a premonition going into this, I was watching the tape, thinking about it. I'm like, man, Andrade should have the physicality where if she can stay on her feet and stay in the pocket, she can blast Jasudavicius, who is a slow and cumbersome striker and not the world's greatest wrestler in the past. But Jasudavicius just came out there and she went beast mode on Jessica Andrade. Like that slamming takedown she hit, I have never seen Jasudavicius execute something like that as well as she did right there. And I picked Jasudavicius going in. Even after saying that, I was like, okay, Jasudavicius, but if she can survive Andrade, and with her size, all Jasudavicius might need is to get one or two moments on top to really start busting Andrade up and breaking her. Because the thing that I think people still just don't really miss or don't really get about Jasudavicius as a talent and how she wins fights is that she's not an elite level athlete. She's not an elite level striker. She's not an elite level wrestler, but she is absolutely an elite level top control fighter. Her top game is crushing. She is probably honestly the best top control ground and pound grappling fighter in that division, just in terms of pure pressure that she can put on somebody when she's on top of them. And this was a great example of that. She only needed a moment on Andrade's back to break her down entirely, crushed her out there, looked great doing it. Already talked about it. I'd like to see Jasudavicius against, if Namajunas can get a win over Miranda Maverick, I'd love to see Jasudavicius against Namajunas. I'd also be happy to see Jasudavicius against the loser of Blanchfield Barber or the winner of Blanchfield Barber, whoever is ready for a comeback fight sooner. That all works for me. And yeah, that's it. Andrade up at 125. There are options for her here. I mean, probably the best one would be Ariane de Silva. She seems like, she's on a 2-fight losing streak, but to Jasmine Jasudavicius and Karine Silva, both very good athletes. She's been fun. She's been a fun action fighter for a while now. So assuming she stays at 125, which I think she'll do, I'd say probably do Andrade versus Ariane de Silva. That would be a pretty fun fight. All right, that brings us to a light heavyweight bout. One of a very few really mediocre fights on this card. Modestas Bukauskas, Iwan Kudalaba. And look, I'm not going to say Iwan Kudalaba got robbed here. Iwan Kudalaba, he has never seen a fight that he wasn't willing to give away through pure boneheaded decision making. But I will say 30-27 Modestas Bukauskas is an absolutely idiotic scorecard. And the fact that round 2 of this fight was the swing round and not round 1 is atrocious. This fight was very simple to score. Modestas Bukauskas won round 3. Iwan Kudalaba won round 2. Round 1, kind of a toss-up. I thought Kudalaba won it. Scored the fight for him 29-28. Not mad that he didn't win it. But the swing round is the first round. That is the round where Kudalaba did a lot more work and threw a lot more stuff out in front of him. And Bukauskas landed the cleaner, smoother, more powerful shots. That's the argument. You're arguing in that round volume versus accuracy. Round 2, Bukauskas just didn't have enough of that. It was a Cutelaba work rate round. Round 3, Bukauskas, he turned it up late and really started pouring it on Cutelaba, went for the win, showed up in that round. But this was making round 2. 2 out of 3 judges scored round 2 for Bukauskas. I don't know how you do it. So this was absolutely the fight it was always going to be, which is two guys that hate winning. Modestas Bukauskas has never seen a fight where he was really willing to grab the bull by the horns and just go for it and try to win the whole fight, whatever advantage he might have. And Cutelaba has never seen a bull he would not try to throw himself on. He has never seen a part of a fight that he would not just throw himself into, no matter how bad the position fell out. So Cutelaba being willing to constantly give things up, Bukauskas being constantly willing to let fights slip away, whatever. But it shouldn't have been that hard to score. In terms of next fights, I mean, I guess Bukauskas might be a top 15 light heavyweight off of that. God, I hate to say it, but if he is, then I don't know, fight Zhang Mingyang or Bogdan Gushkov or something. I don't know. We're moving on. Seeing enough people say we should move on. I would rather move on. Navajo Sterling, Ivan Urslan. And okay, I got to put on my fanboy pants here. Look, I'm not saying this was a great fight from Navajo Sterling. And I get that people are like, feel underwhelmed by the potential hype that a few people, I don't even think he's had a lot of hype, but the potential hype a few people, myself included, were giving him coming in. I still think he's one of the best prospects in the division. The problem is just that he is not experienced. And that comes through in every fight, and it came through in this fight. Spent 2 rounds with a notably chinny, brawling fighter who really only throws hooks. That's all he does, and who has lost repeatedly at a regional level of MMA. Navajo Sterling spent 2 rounds not sitting down on anything, throwing exclusively kicks, and just trying to have a light, rangy kickboxing game where he let Urslan come forward and bully him and land dozens of right hand. I mean, he didn't know how to slip a right hand in this fight. It's just a great show of the lack of the lack of composure, the lack of experience that he has in a fight, because suddenly in round 3, he finally realizes, hey, you know what? I should actually plant my feet and go after this guy a little. And the moment he does that, he starts wrecking him. Navajo Sterling is clearly, he's got the size, he's got the athleticism, he's got the chin. He even has some of the he has good instincts. He throws jabs to the body. He throws low kicks. He knows how to throw straight punches and hooks. Like, he's got good form on everything. The potential is there for him to be a great fighter, but it might be in like 4 or 5 years. So this is just, this is the hard part of being in the UFC to get your experience, is that guys like Ivan Urslan or Tuko Tokos, who he fought last time out, they're not good light heavyweights. They're not good fighters at this level, but they do have a ton of experience. They are used to fighting a lot. And so they need, they can handle themselves. They're ready to handle themselves much quicker than he is in a fight. So I don't know. I still actually like this performance from Sterling, is what I'm trying to say. When he actually got his game together, when things started to click for him, he started to dominate, but it's going to take time. It's going to be a slow process with him. As for potential next fights, let's see, looking at our light heavyweight division right now, who do we got down at the bottom? Who's just putting some wins together? Honestly, Brenson Ribeiro just came off he's fighting. Oh, no, yeah, he just came off a shocking win over Azamat Murzakanov. That's a fight I would like to see Sterling in. Or, I mean, unfortunately, that's the thing. Is it Ribeiro, Gushkov, Zhang Mingyang? Like, you're already getting at the bottom of the UFC rankings in these kinds of fights. But those are probably reasonable fights. Let's see. Yeah, Adolfo Bellato is fighting Paul Craig. You could fight the winner of that. Just somewhere in that level, somewhere in that area seems right. If there's an older fighter on the roster, maybe. Nah, that's really it. So it's going to be hard. I don't think, there's not a lot of there's easy potential for him to lose his next fight if he has to take a big step up, but I still think that the long-term potential for him is right there to be an actually very good light heavyweight in the future. All right, that brings us to a catchweight bout, 187 pounds, Marc-Andre Barriault and Bruno Silva. And this was the one fight on the card where it's two guys that just shouldn't really be fighting anymore at this level. Barriault has been getting knocked out regularly in his most recent fights. And Bruno Silva just seems like he doesn't want to fight anymore. Didn't really need this fight to happen at all. They even alluded to it on the broadcast going in that Bruno Silva's been suffering a lot of confidence issues, struggling with a lot of stuff, all that. And you could see that Silva came out and he's probably been working with a sports psychologist and all that. He came out looking angry and looking like he wanted to fight. And all it did is show why he's been so shy about fighting lately, because Marc-Andre Barriault pinned him to the cage, landed a few shots, put him to sleep, and injured him badly enough that he had to be stretchered out of the cage. The report was a neck injury. It was really hard to tell how long he was actually knocked out for versus how long he was just laying on the ground trying not to move. It was definitely a scary knockout. It's definitely the kind of fight where, I already didn't want to see Bruno Silva fight anymore, but I really don't need to see it anymore after this. And for Barriault, yeah, you got to win. It doesn't tell us a lot about where Barriault is as a 35-year-old middleweight who's been knocked out several times recently. I mean, come back in and fight, I don't know, somebody like Michael Oleksiejczuk. Well, no, they already did fight, didn't they? Or didn't? No, I guess they didn't. Yeah. So you could fight Michael Oleksiejczuk. That's a good fight for him. That would tell us something. Or Abus Magomedov, maybe, or Bruno Ferreira. Those would be Christian Leroy Duncan. And, he's just going to have to be at this point in a position where he's an action fighter and he's fun, but I wouldn't take this and trust that he's about to make some kind of comeback run. All right, that brings us to a featherweight bout. Daniel Santos, Li Zhongyang, and great show up for Daniel Santos, up at 145 pounds. And for Li Zhongyang, this is a disaster fight for him. He got exactly the fight he wanted. He had everything going his way. He got a war with Daniel Santos, which was exactly what he was prepped for, exactly what he trains for, clearly, exactly the intention. And he just couldn't maintain it. Daniel Santos was the one ready to war. He was the one ready to get hurt and come back. He was the one ready to go through and put it on Li Jingyang. And I think I felt like Li Jingyang won the first round still. But this was just a great show up for Santos to fight through hell, come back, and start putting it on his opponent. And yeah, I agree. He might need to go back to bantamweight. He looked a little soft out there. But that said, he's missed weight and had so much trouble over his career competing regularly at bantamweight. I think he has to stay at featherweight for a while. He has to stay there long enough to get the motivation to really treat his diet and weight cut right. And it might just be that he's fucked it up too much for too long, that he can't cut the weight anymore. But like Daniel Santos has more canceled fights than wins. I think he has to stay at featherweight for a while. So this was a great show up for him. And yeah, for Li Jingyang, this is a drawing board fight where you got to look at yourself and say, if this is what you are training to do all the time, then why is it sapping you so badly? Why can't you maintain this? And, you got to find a way to fight around that. Otherwise, Li Jingyang might just be washing out of the UFC before long as a seemingly good athlete with all the aggression needed to be a fun fighter, but who can't maintain his own pace he sets. Finally, that brings us to a bantamweight bout. Bekzat Almakhan, Brad Katona, and this was a pretty remarkable show up for Bekzat Almakhan. I know a lot of people don't like or rate Brad Katona all that well because he was very annoying on Tough, but he's always been really tough and really tough to look good against. Even guys that beat Brad Katona tend to have a really hard, ugly fight with Brad Katona. So for Almakhan to just go out there and annihilate him, that's honestly, that says something. And Almakhan, he built his style as sort of like king. He built his style as a big fish in a small pond. I'm not going to say he was can crushing because there's a lot of talent in Uzbekistan. But Almakhan was definitely, you watch his fights and you're like, oh, this is the one. He's the dominant athlete every time. And these guys he's fighting either are terrible strikers or they're just not good athletes. They're really one-dimensional regional talents. But he's had enough success and spent enough time winning on that circuit to build a really complete game that's obviously very comfortable for him. And it's a weird game. It's very built on single power strikes, on big physically dominating moments, big takedowns, big kicks, big punches, big grappling moves, big, everything being done with physical dominance and presence. And he's got the chance to build that confidence up by doing that for a while regionally. And that's going to make him an odd fit for the UFC because it's not the high output, high volume meta that so many fighters are in right now. But it could be a game-breaking thing because Katona is right in that high output, high volume meta, and he just tried to throw himself at Almakhan and got detonated for it. So maybe a fight like Victor Henry could be really fun for Almakhan. Or let's see, what else? Looking for another solid. I think he should really be moving up into some veteran fights quickly. So I mean, honestly, I would be fascinated to see him fight Damon Blackshear, or to see him in against like Vinicius Oliveira. That'd be a hell of a lot of fun. Those all seem like really fun options for a guy in Almacon's position, where even at only 27, he seems like a pretty fully formed talent for high level, for what his game wants to be. So yeah, I'll say throw him in against Vinicius Oliveira. That'd be a lot of fun. Two really single shot power strikers trying to make their way in the bantamweight division. I'm here for that. All right. On that note, overall, I'm not going to do a bonus because just me by myself, but I would give this card as a pay-per-view. I'm going to give it a surprising 4.5. The crowd was there. They showed up for it. It was not sold as big enough. It was not presented as big enough for it to be a really special card. But De La Maddalena Muhammad showed up. Shevchenko Figueroa was the best version it could have been. And the rest of the card was at least entertaining, even if it was weird or wild or whatever. I had a good time. I was really able to sit here and fill an hour just babbling about it. So that's my read. Otherwise, remember, please subscribe to our channel over on Substack. Help us out. And you can find me over on Twitter at Zane Simon. You can find me on Substack at Zane Simon and on Blue Sky at Zane Simon. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We will see you next time.